Michael Patterson sat alone in the corner booth of the Golden Star Diner, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Outside, snow fell gently on Christmas Eve, and the streets of downtown were nearly empty. Most people were home with their families, where they belonged. But Michael had nowhere to go. At 57, he had everything money could buy and nothing that truly mattered. His salt and pepper hair was impeccably styled, and his tailored black suit probably cost more than most people made in a month. Patterson Industries was a household name. His tech innovations had changed the world, and his net worth was measured in billions. But none of that could fill the emptiness that had consumed him. Since his wife, Sarah, died 3 years ago, they'd never had children. Sarah couldn't, and they'd talked about adoption, but somehow the years had slipped away, consumed by business deals and travel and the relentless pursuit of success. And now Sarah was gone and Michael was utterly alone. He'd sent his household staff home for the holiday. His brother's family had invited him to their celebration in Colorado, but Michael had declined. He couldn't bear the thought of being surrounded by happy families, of watching children open presents while he sat there, a reminder of all he'd lost and never had. So instead, he sat in a diner on Christmas Eve, watching the world go by through the window. The place was nearly empty, decorated with slightly worn garlands and a small artificial tree in the corner. It was a far cry from the lavish holiday parties he usually attended, and somehow that felt right. He didn't deserve joy. He didn't deserve celebration. The bell above the door chimed, and Michael glanced up out of habit. A young woman entered, shaking snow from her blonde hair. She wore a cream-colored coat that had seen better days, with visible tears and patches. Behind her came a little girl, perhaps 6 or 7, with the same blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. The child wore a green sweater that looked hand-knit and sturdy boots. The woman's face was drawn and tired, with worry lines that seemed too deep for someone who couldn't have been more than 30. But when she looked at her daughter, her expression softened with unmistakable love. They slid into a booth across the diner from Michael, and he watched as the woman pulled out a small purse and carefully counted coins. The little girl sat quietly, her eyes taking in the diner's Christmas decorations with wonder. The waitress, a motherly woman named Betty, who'd been kind to Michael during his solitary meal, approached their table. Michael couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw the woman point to the menu, then say something while gesturing to her daughter. Betty nodded and walked away. A few minutes later, Betty returned with a single plate of pancakes, a glass of milk for the child, and a cup of water for the mother. Michael watched as the woman cut the pancakes carefully and placed the plate in front of her daughter. "Eat up, sweetheart," he heard her say softly. "But, Mommy, what about you?" the little girl asked, her voice carrying across the quiet diner. "I already ate, baby." "This is all for you." It was a lie, and Michael knew it. He'd watched the woman count her coins. She'd had just enough for one meal, and she'd given it to her child. The little girl looked uncertain, but she picked up her fork and began to eat. The woman watched her with such tender devotion that Michael felt something crack inside his chest. When was the last time someone had looked at him like that? When was the last time he'd mattered to anyone beyond what his money could do for them? He signaled Betty over to his booth. "That woman and child," he said quietly, nodding toward them. "I'd like to pay for their meal, and I'd like you to bring the mother a full dinner as well. The best thing on your menu. Don't tell them it's from me." Betty smiled warmly. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Patterson. I'll take care of it." A few minutes later, Betty appeared at the woman's table with a steaming plate of roast turkey, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and fresh bread. "The gentleman over there wanted you to have this," Betty said, gesturing toward Michael before he could stop her. The woman's eyes widened, and she looked over at Michael with an expression of shock and gratitude. "I can't accept that," she said, but her voice wavered. "I don't have enough money to—" "It's already paid for," Betty said firmly, "and it would be a shame to let it go to waste. Merry Christmas." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Michael again, and he saw her mouth the words, "Thank you." He nodded awkwardly, uncomfortable with the gratitude. It was such a small thing. Why did it feel so significant? The woman ate slowly, savoring every bite, and Michael found himself unable to look away. There was something about her, about them, that pulled at him. The little girl chattered happily between bites, and occasionally the mother would smile, though the worry never quite left her eyes. When they finished eating, the woman carefully gathered their things and approached Michael's booth. Up close, he could see that she was even younger than he'd thought, with delicate features and eyes the color of honey. The little girl held her hand tightly. "I'm sorry to intrude," the woman said, her voice soft and slightly rough, as if she'd been crying recently. "I just wanted to thank you properly. That was incredibly kind. You have no idea what it meant to us." "It was nothing," Michael said, and realized how dismissive that sounded. "I mean, I'm glad I could help. It's Christmas Eve. No one should go hungry." "I'm Claire," the woman said. "And this is my daughter, Lily." "Hello," Lily said shyly, then added, "You're sitting all alone. Don't you have family?" "Lily," Claire said, embarrassed. But Michael found himself answering honestly. "No, I don't. Not anymore." Lily's face fell. "That's sad. Everyone should have family at Christmas." Claire touched her daughter's shoulder gently. "We should let this gentleman enjoy his evening. Thank you again, Mr. Patterson. Michael Patterson." And actually, he surprised himself by continuing. "If you don't mind my asking, where are you headed tonight? Forgive me for being presumptuous, but you look like you might need help." Claire's face flushed and she looked down. "We're fine. We have a place to stay." It was another lie, Michael realized. He recognized it because he'd become so good at spotting lies over the years in business. "Please," he said gently. "I don't mean to pry, but it's Christmas Eve, and it's freezing outside. If you need help, I have the means to provide it." Claire's composure cracked and tears spilled down her cheeks. Lily pressed close to her mother's side, looking frightened. "I'm sorry," Claire whispered. "I'm trying so hard to hold it together, but it's been such a difficult year." "Please sit down," Michael said, gesturing to the empty seat across from him. "You don't have to tell me anything. But if you want to talk, I'm a good listener." Claire hesitated, then slid into the booth, pulling Lily in beside her. For a moment, she just sat there, struggling to compose herself. Then the words came tumbling out. "I lost my husband 11 months ago, Daniel. He had a heart attack." "He was only 32. We didn't have much life insurance. And I've been trying to keep us afloat. But I lost my job 3 weeks ago when the company downsized. I've been looking for work, but it's Christmas, and no one's hiring right now. We lost our apartment 5 days ago because I couldn't make rent. We've been staying in my car, but it broke down this morning, and I couldn't afford to fix it. I spent our last money on gas to run the heat, and when that ran out, we came here because I knew at least I could get Lily one warm meal." She covered her face with her hands. "I'm a terrible mother. My baby is sleeping in a car on Christmas Eve." Michael felt his heart breaking. Here was this woman clearly doing everything in her power to care for her child, believing she was failing, and here he sat, with more money than he could ever spend, utterly useless in his grief and self-pity. "You're not a terrible mother," he said firmly. "You're doing everything you can in an impossible situation. And you know what? Tonight that changes." Claire looked up at him, confused. Michael pulled out his phone and made a call. "Robert, I know it's Christmas Eve, but I need you to book a suite at the Grandview Hotel. 2 rooms. Put it under Claire." He looked at her questioningly. "Morrison," she whispered. "Claire Morrison. Indefinite stay. Charge it to my personal account." He paused. "Also, I need you to get me the number for Sandra Chen. Yes, I know it's late. It's important." He ended the call and looked at Claire, who was staring at him in disbelief. "The hotel will be ready in half an hour. You and Lily will have a warm place to stay for as long as you need. Tomorrow is Christmas, so we'll let you rest and celebrate the day. But the day after, I'd like you to meet with Sandra Chen. She's the Director of Human Resources at Patterson Industries. We can find a position for you." "I don't understand," Claire said, shaking her head. "Why would you do this for us? You don't even know us." Michael was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer. Finally, he said, "My wife Sarah died 3 years ago. We never had children. For 3 years, I've been going through the motions, building my company bigger and bigger, making more money, but none of it means anything. Tonight, I was sitting here feeling sorry for myself, drowning in my own loneliness. And then I watched you give your daughter the only meal you could afford. I watched you lie to her so she wouldn't feel guilty for eating. I watched you show more love and selflessness in 5 minutes than I've shown in 3 years. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What's that? Claire asked softly. That love is what matters. Not money, not success. Love. You have so little, but you're so rich. And I have everything, but I'm bankrupt in the way